Listen to this. Ground elevation changes observed on satellite radar data. A Santorini volcano update. The latest satellite-based radar measurements on the surface of the island group of Santorini seems to show that some inflation has affected the volcanic complex of Santorini since the start of this current seismic crisis that started about 10 days ago. So Michalis Foumelis, he's associate professor at the Department of Geology of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. He has reported today to a local newspaper that for some time now we have detected some signs of change in the volcano of Santorini compared to its previous state of calm. The findings are not yet very conclusive and the observed deformation is still relatively weak, but could mean that magma has intruded at shallower levels, raising the chance of a new volcanic eruption in or near Santorini, the Santorini caldera, a complex stratovolcano. Wow. Let me start this video with a comment that has been written underneath one of my videos. My mother lives in Santorini full time. Luckily, she has returned to the mainland but has had to leave her donkeys there. So some local men who won't leave are taking care of them. Anyway, to the point, all the locals seem to be expecting an eruption and aren't really in the opinion of what the government are feeding them, and that's why most have fled. They feel they can survive an earthquake with the emergency help, but not survive an eruption. So listening to the gut feeling of locals that live there, that know the island, that have a feeling for the island, how it's roaring, how these humming sounds are coming, the smoke, they feel that something is out of the ordinary, and they probably, most of them, have made the right decision because there's news. Are we witnessing right now how the next big European natural disaster is unfolding in Santorini in Greece? This could very well be the case, guys. There's so many news coming out today from problems with construction that could be devastating for tourist places and hotels. But that's not all. A land rise has been confirmed, and a land rise means there's magma filling up underneath. There's something moving underneath that makes the land rise. And guys, you will be shocked about the location. This is really scary. The earthquake swarm continues with higher magnitudes again. The state of emergency has been declared, and we hear from residents. We have live testimony from residents, but also there's still so many people on the island that have not left yet, and that is not a good thing, guys. But also there is news about how people can get off the island and how they have to pay for that. But the earthquake swarm, the location, Kolumbo underwater volcano, Santorini volcano, fault lines. People are preparing for tsunamis. I will tell you all about that. We'll dig into this. This is an absolutely important video, so stay with me till the end because the important facts will come one after the other. I tell you this, the tension curve is not going down. So look at this image, guys. Let's start with this image that is coming from the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, their seismological laboratory. This is the earthquake swarm, and you see Santorini there that also shows earthquake swarms. And you see Santorini has in the middle there, I'll show you here in the map, there's also earthquakes, but the majority of the earthquake swarm has now traveled a little bit northeast of the underwater volcano Kolumbo, which I show you here in this circle. And Kolumbo is basically a volcanic area. So there's several craters that are coming from there. So is magma on the move from Kolumbo? That's why we see that seismic swarm. Has that activated fault lines? And have the fault lines maybe activated the volcano? Is this something, are they working together, so to speak? But what are the news, guys? This will blow you away. So The heat is rising up. This is what we can say, is this magma rising up. More and more scientists come to the conclusion that this is not purely tectonic, that magma is involved, ergo some of the volcanoes are involved. Just yesterday, there were discussions surfacing that there is probably a potential land rise that has been discovered by local fishermen. They were making pictures and they said the water is receding. You've seen my last video. I've had it in the thumbnail. Land rise discovered, and I told you it's not been confirmed. It is confirmed by now because there were local fishermen on the cliff of Anudros. You see that island here in the map. This is basically a small island that is at the center of this important seismic crisis that we're seeing live here. And they thought, although there's no low tide, that the water was receding. But we know if there's a land rise happening, that's why it seems like the water is receding, because the land is coming up from underneath. So that land rise has basically been confirmed because they have obtained satellite data from Sentinel-1 coming from the European Union and the GNSS networks of the Volcanic Monitoring Institute, and they have detected a small land rise. But guys, it'll blow you away. Where? Right now, what they have discovered is not at Kolumbo. It's at the Santorini crater. Inside the Santorini crater. Santorini is a volcano that can produce devastating eruptions, and it has done so in the past. So land rise right underneath Santorini, guys. This is major, and this is scary, scary, scary. Also, because that land rise is at a considerable distance from that massive earthquake swarm that we're seeing. So now, basically, Santorini, right underneath the Santorini crater, caldera, underneath Kolumbo, we've got the earthquake swarms along the fault lines, something that officials and seismologists say they have never seen before in their lifetime. So this new knowledge, these new data, they changed the narrative completely. And I have said it the last few days. I don't believe that this is only tectonic. I've reported about this back in December. So now, even more skeptical scientists are having doubts about this origin of this seismic complex, of this seismic crisis, because officials have been saying until now, and they still do, it's a seismic crisis. They're very worried that they could see a 7.7 magnitude earthquake again, like in 1956, that did cause a tsunami and an eruption. I've shown you the picture. I show you the pictures again. That was a small eruption, basically in the middle of that caldera right now, where there's the land rise as well. And you still see the black lava fields in this area. So scientists are shifting their narrative, that the origin of this seismic crisis could be magmatic, could be caused by magma rising up, by a magma chamber filling, by a volcano. And Santorini, this is what's clear, last year has woken up. We've seen earthquakes there. And of course, still, nobody knows exactly. The science is not as progressed that they could be 100% sure, but the indications really clearly point in that direction. And since we do not know exactly what is happening, it is even more important that the local population is protected. And yeah, they have declared the state of emergency. They want to involve the military way more. But shouldn't they get everyone off Santorini and the neighboring islands? Because there's still residents that are staying. They are preparing the local population, don't get me wrong. We'll get into this. They're preparing for a tsunami, for a bigger earthquake, for all that. But, worst case scenario is a bigger volcanic eruption. Question is, how much land did rise? How high did the land rise? And how widespread is this? Is this spreading into the area where we see the seismic crisis right now? Where is this coming from? And when did it start? They don't know that. Another interesting comment from Australia. Hey, Michael, thanks for your comment. So the comment is, geology school teacher here from Sydney. So dead alarmed by this, especially the new information on the land rising so fast on the Santorini shores. But much more disturbing that Mykonos, 150 kilometers north, has risen an astounding 1.5 meters, suggests a very large scale intrusion of deep magma. Tectonic movement causing displacement of that scale would likely cause widespread, very large earthquakes. As that has not occurred, it leaves magma intrusion as the likely culprit. Nothing is sure, as we don't have perfect understanding or foresight of tectonics and volcanism in any particular place. And then he writes in big letters, but these reports of events that have already taken place would, if I were in charge, prompt me to evacuate all people and livestock to 100 meters altitude within a radius of 500 kilometers at least, because of tsunami readiness. Athens is approximately 200 kilometers distant and, in my opinion, within range of being impacted. Wow, guys. As is the entire southwest coast of Turkey. And they have seen the water receding. That's what they report. Is that due to the land rising? And he says, as is Crete and Rhodos, another two famous Greek islands, possibly going as far as the Nile Delta, should enact precautionary measures. The island of Santorini and all surrounding islands should be fully evacuated, again, in my opinion, due to the threat of possibly large volcanism. Thanks for that comment. I fully agree. And then he also says, safe is better than sorry in my book. That's also what I almost always say. And he also says, governments should know better than to ignore earth sciences. And Michael, I know you've given another statement about the word with the C. I can't say that on YouTube because they would demonetize this video, but I know what you mean, absolutely. And here's the next news that will blow you away. Authorities said they were using AI to accurately calculate the number of earthquakes that occurred since the beginning of the swarm on February 4th. 7,700 earthquakes in total. But basically this has already began on January 26th. So probably we're reaching 8,000 earthquakes by now. And more than 2,300 above magnitude 2. And then since midnight, there have been more large earthquakes, another 4.6, for example, a 4.2, 28 earthquakes in the higher ranges. So we've had the 5.3 yesterday, 5.2 many are saying, and it keeps coming. And I said it yesterday, there is a slow but obvious migration of the earthquake epicenters towards the northeast to the islands of Amorgos. So what I'm waiting for is, just yesterday, a team of international researchers has installed 4 new underwater seismographs near the Kolumbo volcano and the uninhabited island of Anidros. So this will allow seismologists to have even more data on the current seismic sequence and how the distribution of these epicenters is going. And I hope that we will hear from them very soon. And for now, at least 10,000 people have left Santorini because they're fearing a strong earthquake or even a tsunami, probably an eruption as well. But there's still people on the island. And then look at this map here. The municipality of Taira was declared a state of emergency by the decision of the General Secretariat for Civil Protection due to this alternating seismic crisis seismic sequences that are still in full swing. And here's another video, a live cam captured from yesterday. You see the earth beneath the feet of all these residents does not stop shaking. This is not the wind. This is not wind shaking a webcam or something like this. This is really shaking. This was during the 5.3 earthquake. And here are the latest charts about the earthquake sequences that are happening since January 28th. So here you see the clusters, and you do see the earthquakes underneath Santorini now. We're seeing more earthquakes underneath Santorini. And then, of course, the cluster, the yellow ones are the most recent ones. And then you see the cluster there, this cloud cluster, how massively this was increasing. So this is really mind-blowing. And then you see the black bars. This shows you how many of magnitude between magnitude 2 and 3, how many between magnitude 3 and 4, and how many between magnitude between 4 and 5, and then between 5 and 6. So over 500 between 2 and 3, and even more between 3 and 4, but also over 110, 20, something like this between 4 and 5, and then also quite a few above 5, I think 4 or 5. And then they show us this chart, it's called the Gutenberg-Richter law, with an earthquake histogram. So there, this is basically, you see it as a histogram, these black charts, how many of 2, 3, 4, and 5. So how are they spread out with the numbers? And there you see the curve. Of course, the blue dots are going down because we have less earthquakes of magnitude 5 or 4. The most is like the highest charge is at magnitude 3, and then above 3. So in between 2 and 4, there's so many, and basically constantly. And also here, there is another live ticker from the University of Athens that shows you the latest earthquakes and the list of the latest earthquakes. And if you scroll down, basically, this is endless. This is endless, and endless only from February 5th and February 6th. So this is absolutely crazy. And interesting, because we were wondering, well, aren't people getting free rides off the island? And it seems not. I remember I reported that people are saying, well, at first, like 2 days ago, Monday, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, we couldn't get off the island. Then the plane tickets were getting so expensive, like 100 to 300 euros. They had to wait in line to get on the ferry. And then they did bring in additional flights, but it seems this has all been commercial. People had to pay for it, because today there was the news that surprised me, really surprised me. They said the airlines have responded to the situation by adding extra flights from Santorini. Okay, this is Aegean Airlines. They have operated 9 flights on Monday, including 5 emergency services, carrying 1,200, like 1,300 passengers to Athens. And now Sky Express announced free tickets for children under 12 and teachers from the affected islands for flights between February 5th and 9th. So that tells me the others have to pay. The others still have to pay. So on Thursday, the Greek officials said the state of emergency for the island would be in place for nearly an entire month, until March 3rd. So what's happening? That is a little bit strange to me. Dr. Athanasios Ganas, he's the research director of the National Observatory in Athens. He said, quote, "It's really unprecedented. We have never seen something like this before in modern times in Greece." The people that are left on the island, that are remaining on the island, they have raised fears of a potential tsunami. They have built makeshift defenses from sandbags placed along the islands. It's called Monolitos Beach. There's buildings, they're very close to the water. But, we know in 1956, when there was this big earthquake that also triggered this eruption in this area where we now seem to see the land rise, there was a tsunami that was up to 80 feet high, like 25 meters. Some say even up to 100 feet in some areas. So sandbags will probably not help. And the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, he's expected to visit Santorini on Friday. He said today, quote, "All plans have been implemented, forces have been moved to Santorini and the other islands so that we are ready for any eventuality." Maybe they should not move them to the island, they should move everyone off the island. That's what I would do. He has asked residents repeatedly to stay calm and cooperate with the authorities. So authorities are still saying this is tectonic. Yes, they are preparing for a larger quake, and with that is also an increased risk of landslides, because you've seen that strange smoke coming out of the mountains, that beach where that cliff has collapsed onto the beach, that red cliff. The island is constantly shaking, so rocks are getting more brittle, and also buildings. And now, guys, let's get to the buildings, and this is bad. It's really, really bad. So let's listen to the opinion of a seismologist, Akis Tselentis. So he's a professor of seismology at the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, for geophysics, seismology, and engineering seismology. So definitely we should take him serious. And so he recently gave a statement and his own opinion of the seismic sequence that is happening in the Aegean right now. And he said, and he's right with that, and we're seeing this, he said, unfortunately, the seismic activity does not de-escalate, but instead it's intensifying its pace. Only in these few days of February, the earthquakes larger than magnitude 4 have exceeded like 50 or even more by now. And he says that the seismogenic area is expanding and shifting. And so it's obvious, and he says that that large rift of Amorgos that gave us that disastrous earthquake of 1956 has been activated. And I said that. Could the volcano, could Kolumbo have activated that by magma being on the move? If magma's moving and grinding tunnels underneath the crust, and then there's all these fault lines, that could have an effect. Or was it vice versa? Did the fault line start to release tension, and that has made the magma chamber edges more brittle, and then magma was leaking out and getting on the way and starting additional tremors? So are they pushing themselves, the volcano, the fault lines, and then vice versa? That sounds really, really bad. But, let's hear what he has to say. He says, all activity has clearly the characteristic of an earthquake sequence. And unfortunately, the more earthquake happening, the more he thinks the bigger sizes that we will see, the size will increase. He has given that statement before that landrise was discovered. But it's not even about his statement about the seismic activity. It's about what's going on with the buildings on Santorini, and I'll get to that in a second. Of course, seismically, he says the worst case scenario is if we reach the magnitude that it had in 1956. And he also says we could enter a seismic phase that could last for several months until summer, with dramatic impacts on the island's tourism, which doesn't have the best. Show you this here on the map. He said heavy constructions, meaning hotels with swimming pools, have been built on the banks, on the edges of these cliffs, on the slope, basically completely downhill to the sea, underneath the traditional settlement. And he said with false foundations. So I think what he means, this is the translation from Greek, is like not strong enough foundations. Probably that's my interpretation. So if these, and then you see the pictures of these pools on the edge with beautiful views, it's absolutely stunning. But if the foundations are not built right, and the whole island is volcanic, guys, it's volcanic rock, so it's not super stable. So now in the high ranges, we have these continuous shaking events. Imagine you have a foundation Let's say the foundation is sturdy, but you have rocks around it and it's shaking continuously. These rocks are being moved. That causes instability if the shaking doesn't stop, and another one and another one. So it's getting worse, and then maybe the foundations are not strong enough. They didn't invest. This is expensive to build a foundation. And if you're on such a cliff hillside, it needs to be built into the hill, and this is expensive. And if they were cutting corners there, this could all come down. And that's basically what he's hinting at. And then he also says, and now let's speak about the volcanoes. He says both Santorini and Kolumbo are active, and there is definitely a two-way relationship with the earthquakes. That's what he's also saying. And he says, I would ask politicians, local politicians and non-local politicians. So he wants that scientists are checking these buildings, that they do seismological assessments of the latest construction and older construction to see, are these structures solid? And he said they need to contribute and they need to do their jobs and not listen to hotel interests, to interests of the tourism industry. Well, that's money. Money talks, money rules. That's the problem. Hint, hint, Iceland, Blue Lagoon. If you're a follower of my channel, you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, check my Iceland playlist and go for the videos that are about the Blue Lagoon, and then you know what I mean. He said, of course, there's a slight chance, and he calls it a slight chance, that this phenomenon that we're experiencing right now will end up with medium-sized earthquakes and nothing more will happen. But he says we have to think about the worst-case scenario. And he says everyone should understand, this should be clear, that the lives of the inhabitants of Santorini are far above any economic and political interests. Thank you for speaking out. This guy, thumbs up. This is absolutely great. Because usually you don't hear that. We haven't heard that in Italy, in Campi Flegrei. They were worried about home prices in the Naples area. Well, there's more than 6 million people. There's a lot of homes. So they were also talking about a seismic crisis and not a volcanic crisis, until really they got a lot of pressure from scientists that are saying, prepare for the worst, prepare for a volcanic eruption, because even a small eruption can be catastrophic. We're still waiting in Iceland for people speaking out, saying close the Blue Lagoon earlier, keep it closed longer. But I have to say, there's the police chief of Sudurns that is kind of expressing that he's not been happy in the past with how this went. And since you've asked about the animals, I mean, people are taking their animals. There's some animal shelters that were asking for donations so that they could get the animals out. So I think with the small animals, I think they're being taken, but there's a lot of donkeys on the island. So what's happening with them? I have read an interesting comment from one of my viewers underneath one of my videos. And so what the viewer wrote, my mother is in Santorini full time. Luckily, she has returned to the mainland. Wow, thanks that she did that. Thank God. But has had to leave her donkeys to some local men who won't leave. They're taking care of them. Anyway, to the point, all the locals seem to be expecting an eruption. That is interesting. And aren't really in the opinion of what the government are feeding them. And that's why most have fled. They feel they can survive an earthquake with the emergency help, but not survive an eruption. So the locals seem to know more and they're smart. As I said at the beginning, guys, are we witnessing live how a catastrophe is unfolding? Well, I so hope not, but this is scary what we're witnessing here, guys, and I will keep you updated. If you're just new here and you want to know what happened, since when, and more background, check out my playlists about Santorini and Greece. and check out the videos in the end screen. So much is going on, guys. Also in Italy, Campi Flegrei, and we're waiting for the next eruption in Iceland as well. So subscribe. I would love to see you here on a regular basis. And for all of you who recently subscribed, I saw your comments. Welcome to this channel. We are a really nice group of earthquake and volcano freaks. So thanks for joining. And if you even want more behind the scenes stuff about me and my farm, my animals, and all the chaotic stuff that is happening, become a member of this channel. Click the join button or the link in the description of this video. Follow me for free on my Buy Me a Coffee site. You can buy us a coffee. I say us, my animals, and for me, to support that channel. That's also greatly appreciated. And thanks for all the supers you're sending me here. It really, really helps, guys. You have no idea. So I see you in the next one. Stay safe. Be always prepared of your surroundings. Which natural disaster could hit the place where you live? And don't only trust what you hear, trust your gut feeling. That's what my takeaway from this is, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.